everyday thing. It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday thing when you let your nuts hang.
Donald Trump's name is all over these files. All over it.
Monday was a big day for lawmakers investigating Jeffrey Epstein because it was the first time that they could view the unredacted Department of Justice Jeffrey Epstein files. And they filed into this building behind me throughout the day to take a look for themselves with their own eyes what these documents have to say.
There's no way that somebody is running a $1 billion global child sex trafficking and abuse ring for more than a decade, and there are only 2 people committing crimes.
Members came out with a lot of mixed reviews. Congressman Ro Khanna and Congressman Thomas Massie came out and said that they found at least 6 men's names who the Department of Justice redacted that actually could be potential co-conspirators in the Epstein investigation. So that raises a lot of questions. Why were those men's names redacted? They also said that even in this room behind me, where all of the documents are supposed to be unredacted, they found examples of documents that actually had redactions. So another big question there. And Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin came out from viewing the documents and said that he found multiple examples of President Donald Trump's name being redacted.
I saw one conversation between Epstein lawyers and Trump lawyers relating to the 2009 investigation, which had been redacted, and I don't see any particular reason that it should have been.
Well, we all know why this stuff is being redacted. I mean, let's be honest. Donald Trump is not only trying to cover up any interaction that he had with Epstein, he's also trying to cover up for his friends. Like, let's be real. If you had some friends that were criminals, you might want to, if they greased your palm a little bit, you might cover up for them too. Let's not act like this is not something that's going on. This is a corrupt society. We always talk about the third eye. The Illuminati are always watching. Well, they're here. They're being put on blast, and nobody seems to act like that there will be that none of the things that we thought would happen in a society where the most powerful, the most rich and powerful were doing some crazy wild stuff would be happening, and now everybody acts like this stuff is not happening. This is crazy.
It's on the Epstein files released 11 days ago now and still generating new headlines. Among the latest is a document showing that in 2006, President Trump spoke with Palm Beach police about their investigation of Epstein, saying, quote, "Thank goodness you're stopping him." Here's Justice correspondent Scott McFarland.
A newly surfaced record in the Epstein files alleges Trump told a Palm Beach police chief 20 years ago about Epstein, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this." And that he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, but got the hell out of there. That contradicts Trump's claim he was unaware of Epstein's crimes.
What did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that.
The White House press secretary could not answer if the account was true.
Look, it was a phone call that may or may not have happened in 2006. I don't know the answer to that question. What I'm telling you is that what President Trump has always said is that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club.
Thank you, Chairman Moran.
Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was also pressed today on his past with Epstein.
We had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife.
Lutnick acknowledged he traveled to Epstein's Island in 2012, despite earlier claims he'd cut ties in 2005.
I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, if you don't recall why you did it, it's probably because you was doing it under the pretense you was probably doing some shit you wasn't supposed to be doing. That's just a fact. Like, nobody goes to the Epstein Island and don't know what they there for. You know what I mean? And the fact that you took your children there is crazy. Okay, well, I guess somebody got to watch the children while, you go mess with somebody else's children. But that's all allegedly right now. But for the press secretary was not around in 2006 to hear the phone conversation between Donald Trump and Epstein, or the lawyers, and so she's going to only say what Donald Trump said. She's like the lawyer, the spokesperson for Donald Trump, and the lawyers for Donald Trump is saying, deny, deny, deny. So just keep denying. If you continue to deny that there's any involvement, then you have there's the plausible deniability that you cannot be held accountable for something that you do not know that is going on, because she just don't know. She wasn't there.
The United States government is engaged in an active cover-up of the largest trafficking scandal and influence peddling scandal in the history of the United States, and Donald Trump is right at the center of it. And the person who is living to provide the evidence, who knows what is going on, is trying to invoke the Fifth to buy her clemency. Donald Trump is not only named thousands of times in the latest release from the Department of Justice, he is named over 38,000 times in the files that were released 2 weeks ago alone. And we know that that only represents half of the files that the Department of Justice has in its possession, including files that were used for direct investigations of perpetrators, people who committed crimes, people who were co-conspirators in those crimes, and individuals who knew of those crimes. We know that there are multiple administration officials, including Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, who served as the appointee for the DOJ efforts in the White House. We know that the Secretary of Navy. We know that Steve Bannon. We know that there are more than 36 associates, family members, and individuals directly associated with Donald Trump named in those files.
That is a fact. It's not that just Donald Trump is trying to save his name. Donald Trump is not trying to save his name. There are other predators in these documents that are being covered up, and we're saying by this administration. Why? I'm trying to figure out why in any administration has the Epstein files not been put out there. And I'm trying to tell you, it's been some high-ranking people who have really stopped these files from being put out there, because Epstein has been under investigation for years, for many, many years. So why now are we blaming this administration? One, Donald J. Trump is one of the elites who's hobnobbed with Epstein. He's being named in these files, along with a lot of other people, and that is the reason why these files won't come out during this administration, because the President of the United States is one of the elites who has been named in these files. So, like, nobody said nothing about George Bush. Nobody has said anything about George Bush. They said something about Bill Clinton, but nothing about George Bush. So do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, it's not a Republican thing. It's a sick person pedophile thing. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's a sick pedophile thing. And these files need to be put out, and the people who have committed crimes, even if they come close to guilt, somebody needs to be held accountable for something. And they're giving Ghislaine Maxwell, they're giving her immunity, and she's not speaking. Or if she has spoken, she's not telling everything. She knows everything. She's a sick person, and she's being let off because they're trying to protect the knowledge that she has for some reason.
We went through the hearing as relates to the Clintons. I said, listen, we know that Donald Trump's name is mentioned more.
And what is your message to President Trump in that case?
Same thing. We're going to be on his ass. I mean, you know, it is so... I don't really know where we are in this country. Why are we even having this conversation? The United States is falling apart right now, partially because he's going out and randomly allowing for the killings of people in the middle of the street. But the other part of it is that we have a 34-count convicted felon, and there are people that are still shielding him from any type of accountability as it relates to a child sex trafficking ring. It is time to take the blinders off. Like, I don't understand why we are pretending like any of this is normal. And I think that that is the level of frustration that so many people are bringing, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, specifically to the Epstein file situation. Because right now we know that they were willing to try to throw the Clintons in prison for not showing up, yet they won't even allow us to bring other people into committee who we know are mentioned in these files and mentioned so much more. When we went through the hearing as relates to the Clintons, I said, listen, we know that Donald Trump's name is mentioned more. Bring him in too. Like, I'm not saying that this should be partisan. This should be whoever. I want to be clear about that. This, for the Democrats, this isn't partisanship. This is about right versus wrong.
I just said that. I don't even have to even know what these people are talking about. I just said this is not about Democrat or Republican. This is about catching predators. If these people were predators and if they were knowingly engaging in something that would tamper with young children and they were auctioning off children, everyone in this thing should be held accountable, no matter their political stance. But these are all elite people, and you know, and that's why I said I don't know why these files weren't brought up during the Joe Biden administration. Why weren't they brought up during the Joe Biden administration? You know, and I think it's more. I don't know why there's so much emphasis into bringing this stuff out while Trump is in office, and it's because he's in office and his name is in these files that makes it more intriguing to know what's really going on with these files.
So there are new questions about what President Donald Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's inappropriate behavior and when. You may remember I asked the president about this just a few months ago.
You said that Jeffrey Epstein stole people from Mar-a-Lago. At the time, did you know why he was taking those young women, including Virginia, who was just 16 at the time?
I would figure it was ABC fake news that would ask that question, one of the worst. But no, I don't know really why. But I said, if he's taking anybody from Mar-a-Lago, he's hiring or whatever he's doing. I didn't like it, and we threw him out.
But now we're learning new information. So buried in the 3 million pages of the Epstein files was this FBI document from 2019. A former Palm Beach police chief who was investigating Epstein said that Donald Trump called him as word got out in the mid-2000s that Epstein was charged with sex crimes. Police Chief Michael Ryder told the FBI years later that Trump called the Palm Beach Police Department to tell him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. President Trump was friends with Epstein for 20 years. He has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. A DOJ official tells us they have no corroborating evidence that President Trump made that call 20 years ago.
The Epstein files could possibly bring down a British Prime Minister. Why do you think that is happening there, but it's hardly politically hurting an American president?
Well, I think it's important to note that right now the Congress is controlled by Donald Trump's allies. And our Speaker of this House preferred to keep the House of Representatives shut for more than 40 days so that we could not advance the Epstein Files Transparency Act. He is being actively shielded by members of his own party, whereas in other countries, including the UK, members of parliament are demanding accountability. And that is why our plea is to the American people. We need to hold these people accountable. And my message to Donald Trump is, we're coming for you.
That's what I'm saying. It's people from all over the world who have been named in these files, and I think it's one of the Prince William or Prince Harry. Okay, so the amount of Trump didn't release the files. Trump is in the files mentioned more than Harry Potter is in all of the books. Trump said he wouldn't release the files before he was elected. if you defend Trump, you are a PDF supporter. Make accountability great again. I am no longer Democrat versus Republican. This is good versus evil. You know? So, really, honestly, Trump has a target on his back. Obviously, Trump has a target on his back. With this whole situation, who knows what these eyes have seen? I just think that, like, with the rich and powerful people, the less than 1% of people and the people who have been on this island, they've put more emphasis on mentioning Jay-Z and Beyonce and finding the Clintons and finding Pusha T. Like, Pusha T, when all this stuff was happening, Pusha T was like 19 years old. I don't think Pusha T was on that island. I don't think he even knew any of these people, or any of these people knew of him. So it's a wicked, crazy situation. But
new questions continue to emerge today over the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
One Democratic congressman went to the House floor today to read the names of 6 wealthy, powerful men whose identities were shielded in the public release of the Epstein files. Congressman Ro Khanna is the co-sponsor of the Epstein Transparency Act. He reviewed some of the unredacted files at the Justice Department yesterday, and he joins us now. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You have raised concerns about redactions, even in the so-called unredacted files. What specific categories of material are still being withheld, and what do you think accounts for it?
Donald Trump's FBI scraped these documents in March, and the thing that they took out were survivors' statements to FBI agents about rich and powerful men who raped them or committed heinous acts. And then those documents from the FBI were sent to the Department of Justice in a redacted form. They were already scrubbed. We need those documents to be unscrubbed. That's what the American people want to know. All of the rich and powerful men, many of them who raped these girls, are in those FBI statements, and those statements are still redacted.
As we said, you read the names of 6 men you believe are likely incriminated. How do you differentiate between individuals who are mentioned in the files versus those who are complicit in Epstein's criminal conduct?
It's a very important distinction. There are many people who are mentioned who may be totally innocent, and this should not be a witch hunt. But the names that I read were listed as co-conspirators on documents. And the reality is the Justice Department acknowledged that their identities should not have been redacted. And I just thought it was important for someone to step up and say, I'm going to hold these elite, powerful men accountable. I mean, there has been no accountability in the United States. In Britain, the British monarchy is in trouble. The British government may fall. The Norwegian princess may not become queen. Other countries are having total investigations of anyone who even shared emails with Epstein. And in our nation, we have not had accountability. And so it was a symbolic act. It was an act of courage and defiance to start naming names on the House of Representatives floor.
Having reviewed the materials.
Yeah, I think everything that's about to go on with these Epstein files is about to create a global standoff, and we will start to see nations come together in regards to this, because this is an international human sex trafficking act. Or maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm on TikTok. But this is a global situation where people are young kids were taken to this place and were abused by adult men and women who were of elite status from all over the world. And a lot of this stuff was controlled by email. Remember, you know why people was like, why would they do all this by email? Remember, email, we didn't know what the internet was we didn't know what the internet really was back in the 90s and early 2000s. Like in the early 2000s, we kind of started getting a glimpse of what the internet was. But the early 90s, sending emails, AOL, everybody had an AOL. You know, when you were doing stuff on the internet, you didn't really know how much of it was being tracked or stored and where it was going. So your information, so people who really knew the internet knew how to steal people's information, which caused companies to create cyberware. And when creating cyberware, that created clouds. So people started creating these clouds to where they could store data in case of a breach and things, got out there, that they can kind of close up everything without losing all of their files. And so, and the same thing with computers. Like, people think that, like, okay, say this is your phone, right? Say you delete your picture out of your phone. Just because you delete your picture out of your phone, the picture is not fully deleted from your phone. Your picture is only wiped from your storage, but it's still locked into your phone, into the memory of your phone. What happens is it has to be written over. So it just puts it in a file where it can write over the data. So, like, this might be old school. If you have a old school tape, you got a tape and you record something on the tape deck, you can't delete nothing off that tape deck, but you can record something over it. So then what you would do is you would take something, you would record something over it. But say if you record something over it and you can still hear a hint of whatever was recorded on it at the beginning, or initially what was recorded at the beginning, that is how they keep that on these devices, on computer devices, because it's just overwritten. And so that's how they find all this stuff that people delete off their phones, delete off their computer, because it's been overwritten, but there's still a trace of whatever was on there is still on these phones and still on these computers. And that's how they pull up all this stuff. All this stuff. I mean, look, technology ain't got too far away from the beginning of times with tapes, but it's just being overwritten. That's how they getting all this stuff. And people think that you deleted all these emails from 1996. Well, if you haven't stored a lot of footage on your computer since then, that information is still in your computer and it has yet to be overwritten, because an email is only like 1 megabyte, or 1 kilobyte. Like, it's so small, one email. So it'll take so much to cover up that one email. You can keep millions of emails. It'll take you maybe 10,000 videos to cover up 1 million emails.
Do you now believe there's enough evidence for the Trump Justice Department to bring charges or at least open new investigations?
Yes, I'm convinced of it. First of all, anyone who's in the Epstein files saying that they planned to or were going to or did visit Epstein's Island needs to be investigated under oath. They need to be asked some basic questions. What did you see? What did you know? Did you rape underage girls or see other people rape underage girls? How can you show up to a convicted pedophile's island or ranch or home where you know that young girls are being abused and then not have an investigation or not have someone ask you questions? And yet that's what's going on in America for decades. It is one of the biggest cover-ups and scandals in our country's history to see so many people in finance, in tech, in real estate, in politics, go to this pedophile's island and face no consequences.
So I hear you say this isn't a question of insufficient evidence. It's a question of prosecutorial discretion. How then can you compel the Justice Department to do more?
Well, I can't compel them. I can compel them to follow the law. They have not released the FBI files that the law requires. And we can go to a judge to do that. We can ask the Attorney General tomorrow in hearings. We can have the FBI director explain why those documents were scrubbed. But in terms of the prosecution, that's what the Justice Department may come to a new American president who has to do the investigations and the prosecutions. Congress can hold these people in front of a committee and ask them under oath to testify about what happened. But this is not just a Trump thing. These women were raped or abused for decades, and our country turned a blind eye. And our country turned a blind eye because rich and powerful people were involved. And some of these people have never had to ask questions. Some of them are still in the high echelons of our society. I mean, you look at Howard Lutnick, who is the Secretary of Commerce, and it's evident now that he lied. He admitted to lying. And he is allegedly, in all the files, having business relationships with Epstein after he's a convicted pedophile. And he's going to the island after Epstein's a convicted pedophile. How is that person still in our government?
So how should accountability,
Listen, when people do business with people, it's about money. Greed is a mug. Somebody can do business with somebody knowing that they're dirty, but that's just how dirty some people are. Like, they'll be like, well, I don't care if he's a sex offender. Guess what? I'm not bringing my kids around him because I know the type of person he is. That's what made it crazy when that dude said, I brought my kids and my nanny to the island. It's just like, bro, do you know what's going on in that island? Like, don't bring your kids to that island, goofy. But the fact that he brought his kids to that island is crazy. I would never, even if I knew what was going on. But so people will turn a blind eye. Look at the R. Kelly situation. It's a lady named Sparkle. Her niece is talking about the situation where she was peed on camera with R. Kelly. I don't know if that was her. But I think that was her. And she was talking about how her aunt was grooming her to, get certain things out of R. Kelly because the aunt knew R. Kelly was a pedophile, but the aunt knew that she had to deal with R. Kelly on a business relationship. So she ignored the risque stuff of R. Kelly to get what she wanted. And Sparkle really got a hit song out of, her niece, which is crazy to think about, but that's the reality of these people.
What accountability for Howard Lutnick should follow, in your view?
There should be a bipartisan call for him to resign. I'm not out there defending Keir Starmer. I know Keir Starmer. His ideology is similar to mine and the left, or Mendelsohn. But I'm for accountability, whether it's left or right. And if Lutnick was in a Democrat administration, I'd call on him to resign too, because of his lying to the American people and his affiliations that.
Again, this is not Democrat versus Republican. This is right versus wrong. If you are a pedophile, you do not need to be in office.
Have come out with Epstein after Epstein was convicted of pedophilia.
Are there structural or procedural changes beyond releasing the files themselves that Congress should consider to prevent similar withholding in future investigations?
That's a very profound question. First, we need to make sure that there is a transparency at the Justice Department, that when you have allegations or complaints about pedophilia that they're acted upon. This all could have been prevented, much of it, if Maria Farmer's complaint to the FBI in 1996 had been acted upon. But there was no urgency in the FBI or justice to take action. So this needs to be a priority, sex crimes and crimes against children for the FBI and Justice Department. Second, there needs to be clarity in America that we don't protect the rich and powerful to be above the law. And that's why we need accountability now, because we just kind of move on, as the president says. Then the message to rich and powerful people is you can get away with it. And the message to every other American is that there are two tiers of justice. And if you're a working class girl seeing that, you're going to be scared about coming forward.
Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
You led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had in his apartment. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Why did the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall, 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him, and then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person. Okay?
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you in fact make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when in fact you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
The only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence. There's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. Yeah. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right. There's also a reference to the fact that Epstein had expressed an interest in meeting your nanny. Do you know whether Jeffrey Epstein ever met with your nanny?
No, I saw that. I had no idea what that was about. It had nothing to do with me,
No
as far as
interaction
I
at
know.
all with him on there?
No, as far as I know, no.
Would you, Mr. Secretary, be willing to ensure that the file is complete to share with this committee and the Congress your own records, any records you have that relate to Jeffrey Epstein?
I will surely talk about that. I hadn't thought about that. I have nothing to hide. Absolutely nothing.
You led people to believe that.
This is the guy that brought his kids and his nanny to the damn island. And
you led people to believe that you, 2012.
You brought your nanny and your kids to the island. Jeffrey Epstein is interested in your nanny. Bro. I know a liar when I see one. I'm just looking at this fool and I just know that he's a damn liar. There's no freaking way. There's absolutely no freaking way. No freaking way. This can't be.
The Epstein files released last year showed pictures of Jeffrey Epstein hanging out with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, but the latest batch reveals a far more personal relationship between these two men. In hundreds of text messages and emails between them, their relationship and close friendship is apparent, including in this text exchange from July 6, 2019. In those messages, Bannon and Epstein discuss getting together the following day, but when Bannon proposes a time, Epstein abruptly calls off their plans, writing, quote, "all canceled." Epstein had been arrested by federal authorities for sex trafficking minors. Bannon first met Epstein after the 2016 election, according to journalist Michael Wolff in his 2019 book, Siege: Trump Under Fire. Wolff wrote that Bannon, the architect of Trump's improbable win, told Epstein, quote, "You were the one person I was truly afraid of coming forward during the campaign." Epstein grew deeply invested in Bannon's attempts to spread right-wing populism all over the globe, offering contacts, advice, and access to his plane. Bannon, meanwhile, seemed eager to take advantage of his new friends. One point in July 2018, he asked him in a text message, quote, "Do you know anyone in Europe that wants to control the European Parliament and with it the EU?" At times, Epstein and Bannon reflected on their consequential partnership. Like when they had overlapping interests in Israel, Epstein wrote to Bannon, quote, "Now you can understand why Trump wakes up in the middle of the night sweating when he hears you and I are friends." Before publishing this story, I reached out to Steve Bannon for comment, and he did not respond.
You know President Trump well, you've worked with him. What is he thinking right now? What kind of decisions is he going to have to make about this?
I think he knows that this is a mess, which is why he didn't want to deal with it, right? It's a hot potato that landed in his lap. He didn't create the problem, and he doesn't want to be the one that has to clean it up, but it's in his lap. That's the way that I look at it. And so I think he's trying to figure out how to navigate this in a way that he knows they're going to try to throw it on him, right? Which they're doing.
He's used to that.
Yeah, and so he doesn't like that. But I think he's going to weather that storm just fine, I think. What is he going to do? Is he going to have the Department of Justice investigate more? You know, initially it looked like he wanted to just wash it clean and say, let's move forward, let's not have anything to do with this. And the American people said, we're sick of this. We want more. And so now they're in this back and forth of, okay, well, we'll release some documents. And now, it's just kind of, quite honestly, it's just a huge mess. He's got to just kind of sort through it and figure out what he wants to do with it.
I think it's really time for the country to...
I really think that Trump is, before we get to what Trump has to say about his, I really think that Trump is being targeted. Absolutely. And it's not even just, it's mostly by the left and the Democrats. Oh, obviously. But rightfully so. Rightfully so. Because release the files. Let's see what's in there. Let's peek behind those curtains and let's pull it out and let's try to, resolve the issues of what all happened. Why did Jerry Epstein unalive himself?
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else, really. Now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. Yeah, what do you want?
On the Epstein files, you talked about Democrats who were in there. Elon Musk was also in there, and so was your Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and correspondence that he had with him. Did you read those new files that were published by the Department of Justice?
I didn't. I have a lot of things I'm doing, a lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned two names. I'm sure they're fine. Otherwise, it would have been major headlines.
A lot of women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked out. Do you think that they should be more transparent?
The fact that they thought they released too much. I heard that.
No one has said they released too many files. The only people who said they released too many files are the ones who are guilty that they released too many files.
Secretary Lutnick today was testifying on the Hill, and he said that he had visited Epstein's Island in 2012 with his wife and children, and that's after he said that he had cut ties with Epstein. And Justice Department documents show that he was in contact with Epstein through 2018 over messages. So does the White House stand behind Secretary Lutnick right now, or given what he has said today, has there been any shift in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick's performance?
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary.
Surround yourself by people who know your biggest secrets, and you also have something on them, so no one can tell on each other.
To the other news tonight, there are new developments in the Jeffrey Epstein case, new questions about what President Trump knew about Epstein's sex crimes and when. And the president's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, who said he broke ties with Epstein in 2005, calling him, quote, gross. But Lutnick admitted today he was on Epstein's private island years later and after Epstein was convicted. Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, new questions about what President Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal behavior and when. In an FBI document from 2019, a former Palm Beach police chief says Trump was one of the first calls he received when word got out in the mid-2000s that Epstein was being investigated for sex crimes. The police chief, Michael Reiter, telling the FBI in that phone call Trump told him Epstein's behavior was widely known. The FBI stating Donald Trump told Reiter that he threw Epstein out of his club. Trump called the Palm Beach Police Department to tell him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. The report adds Trump told Reiter that he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Trump got the hell out of there. Trump, who was friends with Epstein for over a decade, has repeatedly said he knew nothing at the time about Epstein's crimes. He insists he broke off their relationship when he learned Epstein was luring away young female staffers who worked at Mar-a-Lago, but that he didn't know why.
I don't know really why, but I said if he's taking anybody from Mar-a-Lago, he's hiring or whatever he's doing, I didn't like it, and we threw him out.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill today, one of Trump's top officials grilled about his own dealings with Epstein.
Did you lie to the American people about your interactions with Epstein?
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had said he'd distanced himself from Epstein in 2005, even calling him gross on a podcast last fall.
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
But today, under oath, Lutnick admitted he had lunch with Epstein on his private island in 2012 after Epstein was convicted of sex crimes.
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions.
The White House tonight standing by Lutnick, even as Democrats and at least one Republican are calling for the Commerce Secretary to step down. It comes as more salacious details emerge from the FBI documents, including this email from 2014 showing Epstein asking his longtime pilot to obtain cameras for Epstein's Florida house. Writing, "Let's get 3 motion-detected hidden cameras that record." His pilot replying, "Already 2 purchased. It's amazing how small they are. I'm installing them into Kleenex boxes now. I'll bring them by later today." And David, on the issue of Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who 24 hours ago pleaded the 5th, her lawyer saying,
Yo, these people are despicable. See, Epstein knew that he knew he was gonna get something on everyone. So he had to get something on everyone. So he had to get the camera footage. Look at this lady. Look at this lady. Let's see what they say.
She will answer questions, but only if granted clemency. And tonight, the White House still not.
She wants clemency. Girl, you serving the rest of your life behind bars. Are you for real? Yeah, clemency. You don't get to die. What? What? You want to be free? You want to go and do what? Just because she's gonna find another rich guy, someone who's going to excuse her pedophilia, who is probably also a rich person who's okay with pedophilia, and live a perfectly normal life, so to say, but they're going to be full of pedophilia. Just because you got caught don't mean you healed. She not healed.
President Trump is mentioned more than 1,000 times in the newly released documents, reflecting a long-standing social and business connection between the 2 men. Previous document releases indicated Trump was listed as a passenger on Epstein's jet 8 times between 1993 and 1998. And now, the newly released documents include uncorroborated claims about Donald Trump. The White House, responding to the Miami Herald, referred to a statement on the DOJ website denying any credibility in the accusations against the president. Several other high-profile men are in the documents, including Peter Thiel, who in one of several emails was revealed to write, "That was fun. See you in 3 weeks." The context of the email exchange is unclear.
Bill Gates shows up in an email written by Epstein, where Epstein claims Gates contracted an STD from a, quote, Russian girl and sought antibiotics to hide it from his wife.
A spokesperson for Gates called the claims absurd and completely false. Contrary to what he said publicly, New York real estate mogul Andrew Farkas co-owned a marina with Epstein, located near Epstein's Island, and the 2 exchanged affectionate and crude emails. The documents reveal Farkas himself also stayed on Epstein's private island. Another revelation? Farkas gave Epstein discounts on dockage and services at the marina, which served as a gateway to what's known as Epstein's so-called Rape Island. Billionaire Richard Branson shows up in the files too, hosting Epstein twice and exchanging friendly emails in 2013, joking about Epstein's harem and giving him advice about rehabilitating his image after Epstein's sex offender conviction.
New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch shows up hundreds of times in this latest tranche of Epstein-related files, mostly in 2013 emails where Epstein is proposing women for Tisch to meet, sending photos and bios.
In one exchange, Tisch asks if a woman he met at Epstein's home is a, quote, working girl, and Epstein replies, NWVER. Then asks for Tisch's phone number, saying he doesn't like, quote, records of these conversations. Later, Epstein tells Tisch, you did well, and that the woman wants to see a play, but is freaked out about his age. In a statement, Tisch wrote in part that he did not take Epstein up on any of his invitations and never went to his island. The UK's Prince Andrew is shown in never-before-seen photos on a floor on all fours with an unidentified female, along with more exchanges with Epstein, arranging dinners and offering meetings with women. And another where Andrew invites Epstein to come here to BP, referring to Buckingham Palace. Many men whose names are in the documents had publicly and vehemently distanced themselves from the predator, but who are shown to have had seemingly friendly contact with Epstein. That includes a number of men in Donald Trump's orbit and his administration. Elon Musk had said in 2019 that Epstein tried repeatedly to get me to visit his island. I declined. Yet, according to the newly released emails from 2012, he asked, are you coming by helicopter? Probably just Tallulah and me. What day/night will be the wildest party on your island? Musk has denied attending that party, nor ever visiting the island. Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in 2025 publicly described Epstein as gross and the greatest blackmailer ever, and that he had resolved years earlier never to be in the same room with him again, suggesting he had cut ties with Epstein. But according to the newly released documents, Lutnick arranged and carried out a private lunch with Epstein and his family on Epstein's private island. And Trump's newly nominated pick for chair of the Federal Reserve appears to have been invited to one of Epstein's social events. We do not know if he attended. One other notable, the director of the newly released documentary Melania, Brett Ratner, appears in the newly released documents, including this photo of Ratner on a couch next to Jeffrey Epstein, with Ratner's arm around an unidentified female, and Epstein sitting shoulder to shoulder with another female, both of their faces obscured.
Multiple media outlets have reached out to Brett Ratner, who apparently you would think, you don't know, but you would think.
So, as of yet, no one has been arrested. No one's been arrested. So, no one's been arrested. No one has been arrested. Imagine that. Alright, everyday people, man. This is all for now. I still got more. I think I might finish the Super Bowl. But who cares about the Super Bowl when we got the Epstein files? More Epstein files coming up tomorrow. We're gonna talk about more about the Epstein files tomorrow. We're gonna deep dive into more of what's going on, and we're gonna try to get some more clarification of what has taken part over the last 24 hours of the Epstein files and what's been uncovered in these millions of files, because people only have time to search through for specific names, but over the next few days we'll start to see people uncover more stuff in these files.
Every day